Hello, Alexei Vranich. Is that pronounced correctly?
Damn close. Alexei Vranich.
Alexei Vranich. Okay, okay. Yeah, whether there's a trill on that R is always tricky for me. But thank you for joining me. I want to first say, so yeah, I'm meeting you for the first time right now. My podcast it was called The Mental Breakdown. I kind of liked the double meaning of breakdown, like to be analytic and break something down, and then we have the mental breakdown, but I'm actually changing it to the mental breakthrough. I think it has a more positive ring, and according to my description, which is life stories, psychology, society, health, culture, martial arts, nature, healing, challenges, solutions, and growth. Very vague, of course. It has a lot of areas, but so this is the 29th episode, but yeah, I'm changing the name. You're the first one when it's called the mental breakthrough. Um, so
I'm glad to start on a positive note then.
yeah, excellent. Yeah, right. Yeah. Um, so one of my guests, Brodie Farber, who I'm a long time, we've done martial arts a long time. He's actually the one who got me into mixed martial arts. We were wrestling together on the in college, and he's also the one that kind of made the connections for me to come out to Thailand. First started training Muay Thai, although I've kind of been out from martial arts and I'm living up in the mountains, living off the land. But I think that's why he recommended you. We have a lot of intersections with, the martial arts, the breathing. You're, of course, an academic. I saw your Google Scholar page, a lot on that. And archaeology, you're an archaeologist and a professor. So I'm interested in all of that. Let's start out first. Yeah, how do you know Brodie Farber? He's the reason you're here, and he's the one that recommended and thought maybe we would connect. So maybe give a background on that, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, how I know Brodie Farber? Well, I was at AKA Thailand in Phuket. Great gym run by Mike Swick. So I'd gone there in between one position and another at universities, and I was having a great time. And the thing is, if you look at me and you look at Brodie, you don't think that we're going to be friends. Brodie is one frightening looking guy, and I like sitting in cafes drinking lattes. But the reason we knew each other is because we both read, and Brodie reads, I read, so we exchange books. So we went, and that's the way our relationship started in a martial arts setting, but based on literature.
Yeah, interesting. That and
So
that, yeah, okay,
we became no, we became good friends, and from there we've hung out in a couple of different places. Uh, During the pandemic, I was in Mexico, and he needed to escape along with his daughter, and there was a great gym there, La Colonia, down in Puerto Escondido. And so Brodie showed up, and of course became friends with everyone really quickly. And everyone's like, "Well, Brodie, he has tattoos really well done all over his body." And one of his tattoos, it says Lexi. And people are like, whoa, you're really close with Brodie. I mean, he's tattooed your name on his leg. I'm like, no, that's his daughter's name, Lexi. They're like, oh, okay. So anyway, we get along, and that's the reason why.
okay, yeah, okay. That's so I know you were so I just kind of did some research a little bit. I saw, yeah, a lot of your publications were in like South America, some Tiwanaku or something, uh,
Mhm.
excavation sites. I mean, there's so many places I want to go over, but let's do some backstory. Maybe I mean, I know you there's a lot of aspects, and I think they all go together. I mean, with martial arts and academics, literature, world traveler. So yeah, maybe just give me a background on what led you into archaeology, and everything really, world traveler, where does it all interconnect? Give me a little life story, and I'll stop you and ask you maybe.
Let's break it down. Let's start with the archaeology.
Yeah, okay.
The story I tell people is that, growing up in the outs and the suburbs of New York City, we'd go into the mom would take me into the museums, and I distinctly remember turning the corner and seeing the brontosaurus with its head slung low, looking right at me, and I lost my mind, and I haven't gained it since, or regained it. And of course, dinosaurs aren't archaeology, but that was my interest in the past. So it started there, and most people eventually leave their dinosaur fascination or King Tut or so on, and then develop normal adult lives. I didn't. I continued with archaeology, and that's led me to a variety of different places around the world, which has created me into an unintentional world traveler.
Okay. So okay, yeah, let's go. So you're in, let's talk about going into, you knew you were going to go into archaeology basically always. I mean, that was it. That's high school. Throughout high school, that was your plan. As soon as you started university, you were taking whatever archaeology classes or prerequisites to get into those classes, or were you sidetracked at all?
Well, when I started university, UC Berkeley, go Bears, I was taking classes, and then I realized, wait, I can actually continue with this and make it into a career. And a lot of folks look at me with a bit of envy, because everybody's path in life usually involves some very difficult decisions on, do I want to go in this direction or not? Or do I want to do this, move here? Everyone goes through that. So people look at me and go, it's like, oh, you're so lucky. You knew since like grade 4 that you wanted to be, grade 2 actually, you wanted to be an archaeologist. You never had to make that decision. Now it's just that I knew one decision, and as soon as you get there, it branches out again into 100 different more decisions. And from there, you have to decide a variety of different ways to approach it, where you want to go in the world, who do you want to work with. There's going to be a lot of failures. I've had projects and career opportunities collapse for things well outside my control, and then you have to take a step back, figure it out, and then go forward again. So while I knew early on what I wanted to do, I wasn't spared that angst that most people feel when it comes to making a decision.
Okay. And so one of the themes I like to cover are those, and one of the reasons why I change it to mental breakthrough is this podcast is, I like those challenges and even trauma or stress, but the growth that can come out of that. And yeah, it may seem like an obstacle or something holding you back, but initially you're able to, it boosts you forward. So do you have any, I mean, it doesn't sound like there's an aha moment where you needed to figure out what to do. You were on the right track, but what sort of obstacles would you say actually projected you forward in the right direction?
Well, what type of obstacles and projecting me forward? I think the same things that cause a lot of angst and anxiety to people. You start on a road, and at one point you start to question, was this my decision? Or was this something that I fell in love with as identity? And at one moment I had to say, do I like doing archaeology? Or do I like people knowing that I'm an archaeologist? Because it's tremendously appealing when it comes to people having a conversation in a bar in whatever place.
Yeah.
You'll be in San Francisco, 99% of the people at the party are working for Google or a startup. And then all of a sudden there's an archaeologist, and I'm the most interesting guy in the room compared to everybody else. Now I was wondering, do I really want to do archaeology, or do I like this adoration, perhaps, or at least I don't have to struggle for a conversation. So that's a moment where you have to sit down. Do I like the archaeological lifestyle, or do I like to do research? because eventually you got to get into the research and you have to love it. And like any field or any profession, there are huge stretches of time that have almost nothing to do with the reason why you got into that field. And you have to do paperwork, analysis, other things. And you're like, oh, good Lord, am I going to do this and get paid this little?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's, so you went straight in, you mentioned New York museum, but I saw you were born in Pennsylvania or something. Was that
Yeah, if you really want that story, I guess it's born in Madison, Wisconsin, moved to the Canary Islands for a year, back to New York, several stints because of both my parents are academics in Spain, and that brought me my obsession towards Roman ruins, the Moorish architecture, and so on. So that really solidified it. Back home, finish up high school, and then I went to UC Berkeley undergrad, UPenn grad school, and then from there it's been various different positions.
Okay, yeah. So I saw that. So your bachelor's is from UC Berkeley. Was that something else, or was that in archaeology specifically, or was it in humanities or something?
Specifically, it's anthropology.
Okay,
It's
okay,
anthropology, but that's simply the way the American program is set up.
Yeah, that's it.
Had I been in England, it would have been archaeology.
Yeah, okay. And so during that time, you, of course, in a bachelor's degree, there's not going to be any requirements that you're doing world traveling and like going to archaeological sites necessarily, or when was your first kind of academic exploration? I know you've seen things. Like when was your first experience with kind of where you were at that point where it really is exciting as you would expect it to be? Your first, like, that.
Yeah. So actually, when it comes to archaeology, and if you're interested in it, and this is something I advise to all my students, you do a summer program, which is called the field school. So you go with a professor, a group of students, and then you go to an archaeological site where you dig. So you're producing data for the professor, but he's doing it out of love for the students, because there's more effective ways to move dirt than getting a bunch of middle-class kids to do it. So when you're there, you get to learn archaeology, but then also you get a taste of the field. You're going, this is what your life will be like every summer. Are you okay with that? Now, that's misleading a bit, because the field school that I did in Italy, southern Italy, wonderful one, through the University of Alberta, we had such a great time. Just imagine 19 Canadians and me. In southern Italy, people are as friendly as hay. The food is great. There's wine, there's ice cream, there's trips, and so on. And you're like, this is great. Now, the problem comes, and maybe we'll talk about it later, what happens when you actually go out and on your own research. But I really, it's the first step towards understanding what your life will be like, and you have to give it a try.
Okay. So when what was that in your bachelor program, or was that later in from Penn State? Or
oh no, that was part of that. You don't need to do that.
Yeah,
you can go do things. But I decided to, and I was lucky enough to have the support from my parents to be able to say, like, what are you doing this summer? It's like, well, I'm going to go to Spain. My friend's digging. Like, what are you doing this summer? It's like, I think I need some training. So I went with the University of Alberta. And then what now? Like, well, I might be doing archaeology in the Mediterranean, so maybe I speak Spanish already. Let me learn Italian. So I went and did an Italian course. So we try to use each summer in an efficient way that advances that career. If you have that opportunity and you have the finances for it, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, no, these are all great mindsets for sure. So when did you let's say in your master's program, did you initiate, when's the first excavation that you initiated? Or was it not until doctorate where you actually like conducted your research from your own, I mean, when did you kind of when were you able to break free of maybe doing what was available to making your first decision that I'm going to do this research?
Yeah. Well, I had many more opportunities. We had wonderful and generous faculty at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, and they were able to show me different areas of the world. And at that point, my original idea had fallen through, so I needed to search for something else. So I was taken to India by Greg Posel, and I saw it. I go, God, this archaeology is great, but India was fascinating, but I couldn't do it. It was really a moment where I felt weak. It was just a different society, and I just wasn't adapting well to it. So I'm like, I need to try something else. Previously to that, I'd been in Bulgaria with Brooklyn College. And I did that, and I'm like, well, there's a couple of things that are good here, but I'm not that turned on by the archaeology. And I reached a point in my graduate career where they said, you need to make a decision. And I really had to go to my committee and be humble, go, listen, I've made a mistake. I've just gone in one direction, another, and I haven't been able to focus. I want to get my doctorate, and maybe I'll continue or not. At which point they said, well, you speak Spanish, and we have a professor here. And I'm like, okay, I'll go with him. And he was accepting of it, and he showed me an entire other world of archaeology to do there. But he was very quick to say, you need to get your own project. As soon as that happened, I started one. It fell apart for reasons outside my control, and I ended up at the site that you just mentioned at the start, called Tiwanaku. And that's where I started to do my real intensive personal work.
So tell me a little bit about that. It sounds like it was a little bit by accident that, I mean, it wasn't like Tiwanaku, I'm going there. What fell apart, or why did the other? Yeah, what circumstances brought you there specifically?
Well, I was going to work on a project in the subtropics of Bolivia, this wonderful area that had a lot of Inca remains. So from the 14th, 15th, 16th century, probably 15th, 16th. And that was a project through USAID and the granting agency. And their priorities changed, as happens with governments. They said, no, we need to put money into producing food immediately for people in Bolivia. So that project fell apart. But the guy that I was working with had a side project at the site of Tiwanaku. And he's like, do you want to join me over here? And I went there. I was like, hey, this is sort of cool. And that's how I landed at Tiwanaku. Now, prior to that, there had been a very large project by Alan Collada from University of Chicago, and he had finished up, and he left some wonderful students there continuing work, but there was a bit of a lull between one project and the other. So another reason I got there was that, first of all, the foundations had been set for foreign researchers now to work in the site, which was pretty inaccessible before that. And the second thing was that there was no one else working there at the moment at that level. So through sheer luck and coincidence, I was able to work on what is the national monument for Bolivia.
Oh, wow.
And it was a very privileged situation for me, and I was very grateful for that happening.
Yeah, yeah. And what major takeaways from that? I mean, even just historically, what area? I mean, you said they're Inca during the time period. This is how many thousands of years ago?
So this is pre-Inca. In fact, when the Inca arrived to that area, they saw these ruins. They're like, what the hey is this? So they were confused by it. But what if you go there, and I recommend that you go there, it's an interesting place. The ruins and what you see date from about usually from like 300 to 1000 AD. So we're
Okay.
looking at
Okay.
1000 to 1500 years ago.
Okay. Okay. And then, so that that was your doctoral research. That's
Correct.
that, and then,
That was that was my doctoral research. But then I continued to stay there because I wanted to continue, and from there I worked for another 6 years, and I was able to get a series of large grants and have some wonderful collaborators from everything from MIT to University of Wisconsin to I would have to make a list
yeah,
of the number of people that came down from different universities, and we were able to create this incredible academic community up at 13,000 feet or 4,000 meters above sea level in the wintertime.
yeah.
So it was interesting time with a lot of great minds in one place.
And so at that time, I mean, you were living off grants. You weren't part of any faculty at that point. You were a student, you graduated, you continued working there just from getting grants, or did you have some sort of professorship, or is just based just research and excavating and 100%?
Had life been good, I would have received a university position right away. But anybody who's going into the field of academics, there's a couple of people that get it right away, and that's usually a combination of talent and luck, because there's so few positions. Everyone else has to sit around for a while and try to build up their resume with research, publications, and so on. And what I was able to do and I say I got very lucky. I ended up getting 2 grants from the National Science Foundation, which also provided for salary. So for several years, I was funded by this grant. So I was able to live well, but modestly in Philadelphia. And I was able to occasionally teach in one form or another. And the rest of the time was running this project. It was a good thing in that sense, because the project in the summertime at one point hit over 200 people. And I am not qualified to run a project with 200 people. I really should have done an MBA before this. But the lead up towards it and then the exhaustion afterwards meant that even though it was just 3 months in the summer, it was probably like 7 months of my life, either preparing or recovering. And then the rest of the time, you're just writing up things.
Yeah.
So that was my state for many years after receiving my doctorate at the University of Pennsylvania.
Okay. And then and were you, I know now you're in Warsaw, you're professor there. You were a professor at UC Berkeley too, or no? That was, or
Well, to continue the story,
yeah.
I had a year fellowship at Dumbarton Oaks, this amazing research facility in Georgetown, Washington, D.C. It's part of Harvard University. And I was able to try to focus on my work and continue these publications. After which a good colleague in University of UCLA at the Coates Institute of Archaeology invited me over. So I went there, and then life became a lot more fun because I became a faculty in residence during that time. So I was living in the dormitories with the students,
Okay.
and then I became an advisor to one of the Greek houses. So I became very much involved in the lives of students. Really enjoyed that. I enjoyed sitting with the students, talking to them, and so on. And I was able to stay at UCLA for 7 years. And then I had a lectureship, I had the residency in the dorms and so on, but I didn't have a full-time position. And you still need to get that. So when that was over, that's when I went to Thailand the first time. That's where I met Brodie. And then a place opened up at UC Berkeley, where I was going to do something similar, living in the dorms and also teaching on campus.
Okay. So let's see what time. So what was your first time over in Thailand? What year that might have been, like 2000
Oof, God.
5, 8,
Eight, right, right before going over there. So that was 2015 or so.
Okay, yeah, okay. So I would have been here. I came over here in 2012, and I would have still been in Phuket, I suppose, too. So yeah, well, there's a lot actually still to talk about, but I'm to go back one time. I've always had this. I've had a fascination with. I like I've been to India a couple times. I really like India. I like Thailand. Some of those. I know you mentioned you were in India. Didn't can I ask? Yeah, what didn't work out about that? It was culture, society, living conditions, or there was something.
I was in India, and I had the best of circumstances. I had like my best friend with me sharing the tent. We had a very generous professor, and the people in India. We were in a small, not even, we were near a small village out in the middle of Gujarat. But this professor really took care of us. Now, anyone who says they go to India and they go, "I love it," I agree with them. Somebody goes to India and say, "I hated it," I agree with them too.
Yeah.
So it was just a combination of things, and just a variety of things, and also a different time in your life. And to tell you the truth, when I came back that first time and I was able to put on back some weight and think about it, I felt really ashamed of myself because I'm an anthropologist. I should be able to adapt. And by the end of my first stay in India, I was just a screaming wreck. I apologize to everyone who had to be around my presence, but I did not adapt well. I also tried really hard just to go somewhat native and not take any of the creature comforts or reduce them. So after thinking about it for a year, I'm like, I'm going to go back and do it right. I went back and spent another few months there, also with the project, and then returned to what I was doing at the time. And at that time, I was able to calm down, perhaps take breaks, go with like, you know what, I'm going to stay at a nice hotel. I'm
Yeah.
going to do that, recover a bit and go out. And I was able to talk to some people and found some beautiful, intelligent folks that I really enjoyed and treasured. But by the end, I realized I just don't have the proper personality, or maybe at that time, to deal with both the wonders and the challenges of India that often occur at the same moment, just simply walking down the street. And with
Yeah.
the world being a big place, I'm like, I think I need to find another location.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't. I if yeah, I don't want to take you too far off. We're still kind of moving chronologically, but yeah, there's now we're in this Thailand, and I've I fell in love with Thailand. This is definitely my home, but I do see. I mean, it's really interesting for me to see the Indian influence on Thai culture, and then so I'm wondering from your perspective as an archaeologist, you're going to notice things. I mean, I was in the northern like Himalayas during the summertime, so it was warm. It's like that's why I definitely had a wonderful experience in India. Green like New Delhi, not so nice of a place to be. It's just so crowded and dusty and dirty. But going to Indian temples um and then later on coming to Thailand, and I I studied abroad in Japan, so I've always liked Asia, Eastern culture. Generically, Thailand has a unique for me. It's unique because I do feel like there's also in like an Oriental influence, Chinese influence. There's this Indian influence, but it also has its own unique culture. So, anything to comment on the connections you made?
No, it sounds like we both love the area for the same reasons. And while I say I had difficulties with India, and that mostly relates to, the dirt, the dust,
Yeah,
the crowds, and so on, which you can learn to deal with because there's so many positive aspects. I mean, any society will have positive and negative, but I attended ceremonies in Hindu temples and found it fascinating
Yeah.
And, you're looking at a kid grew up in my little limited church experience. My parents, being good parents, took me to church, and when we moved to the new town, it was a Protestant church, so it's brown on the inside and it's brown on the outside. And then all of a sudden, you're in this Hindu temple, and there's colors, there's smells, there's incense, there's ash, there's flowers. Absolutely fascinating. And that's something that has drawn me in an aspect of human society, both present and archaeological, that I'm fascinated with. Being able to be in a place like Thailand or in Cambodia, you see the influences from Hinduism, Buddhism, and so on. So for me, every day is a journey both into, having living well, but also into my own research interests.
Excellent, excellent. And so we ever how free are you to talk? Or you? I forgot to ask. I want to make sure. I mean, I have a lot of time. Are you on a time schedule at all?
Oh,
No.
no, this is the beauty of the academic position I have right now,
All right.
is that I can make, I have to do work in a
Yeah.
given day,
Yeah.
but I can make my own schedule.
Okay.
So please, let's continue.
Okay. Good. Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of areas. So I'm interested in your life story, because I mentioned, or just my quick little look at Facebook. I mean, you mentioned things that definitely resonated with me, and things that I believe are just like, to me, they make perfect sense. I'm sure to some outsiders, martial arts has kind of become more mainstream, or there's been some sort of rebirth. The mixed martial arts has done it in some ways, and it's hurt it in some ways, because there's all these traditional martial arts that are that actually, like Muay Thai, is so important in mixed martial arts, which is like a mainstream sport, but it's also deeply rooted in the culture here, and so it's exploded in modern day consciousness, I would say, to some degree. So to me, it makes perfect sense. All these things converge, but maybe give a little bit more on I mean, you're a world traveler because of the archaeology, but you said when you came to Thailand, it was to train Muay Thai. That was the number one reason you came. So maybe back up a little bit and kind of introduce that.
Sure. All right. So, you know what, similar to everyone's story, wrestled in elementary school, a bit in that high school. And the reason was because the house that my family bought in the town we moved to was owned by the wrestling coach. And he moved over 3 doors. So the result is his very patient older son would wrestle with me and throw me around. So from there, it was just like, oh, Thursday nights are wrestling nights. So I'd go there. And then there was judo. My mom saw, like, hey, do you want to go this and do judo? I did that, wrestled. And then something that every wrestler feels, you hit a day where you're like, I don't want to spend another moment with my head pressed into that mat, sweating so much. You're like, I'm done. I'm done. And I let it go. I let it go for a while. And then I started getting interested again a little bit, going, maybe I should be checking this out. And then one day, my sister, Belisa, and she does breathing and so on, but she's worked with a lot of UFC fighters and other folks for breathing. And she calls me. It's like, I met this guy. You're going to be friends with him. That's how she declares it, because she's very much an extrovert. I have some trouble making friends. Like, yeah, I went and interviewed this guy called Mike Swick. He's really nice. You're going to be friends with him. So friend him on Facebook and write to him. I'm like, okay. So I friended Mike Swick, and he is probably one of the most responsible communicators on the planet. He will get back to you, regardless of how many folks have written. And so one day I was like, that's it. I have time in between this. Let me revisit this part of my life. So I flew out specifically to AKA Thailand, got a place, and then showed up, said hello to Mike. He's like, oh, great, here you go. He received me very well, had a group of friends, and there I was. And my intention had been, it's like, great, I got this time in my life. the time I was 47, like, I'm going to train for 4 months, nonstop hard, and I'm going to go to Patong and take a fight. And that's going to be what I'm going to do. So I started training. One day, Mike and the guys were like, we're going to Patong to see a fight. I'm like, great. I go there and I sit and I watch it. I'm like, yeah, there's no way I'm getting in there. I mean, I am not going to bust my face open for this sort of middle-age crisis narrative that I want to create. So I never fought and I never went in there, and I simply trained with his guys, with his fantastic trainers, and got into wonderful shape, built up my confidence, and had a great time. And from there, I've continued with that because I travel so much. The first thing I do when I reach a new place is I look for the Muay Thai or Jiu Jitsu club.
Okay.
And then I join it. And within an hour, you got 20 new friends.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
I call myself a Jiu-Jitsu traveler because I just can't go to one more bar and stand with a beer and hope to make friends.
Yeah.
I just can't do that. So every time I've done that, I go to a place, look up Jiu-Jitsu, 20 new friends. Next
Yeah.
place, same thing. So it's become part of my life in that way.
Wow, wow. Okay, yeah, that's great. That's definitely true with martial arts, wrestling. I know there's always like that. Um, I mean it's a good way to get to know somebody. I mean it's definitely an intimate, like, bonding experience to just, kind of, whether you're beating up each other, just to kind of see each other in that vulnerable position, and you can kind of see somebody's real. You can see they're a real person, somebody that trains, and that's why I say, like, yeah, I mean, martial arts goes with all of these, all of these aspects. I mean, it's a perfect balance for like academia too. I mean, to go in intellectually, you need these. I mean, you need that balance. I mean, there's some people maybe don't. They could be all in one, but when you find that balance, it is like a necessary part of your life. It's like, so you're able to do that when you travel. What about, is it separated, or on your weekly? Do you have a weekly involvement in martial arts, or?
Well, right now I'm living in Warsaw, Poland, and almost from my window I can see the jiu-jitsu place. Great place called Gorilla. Uh, good folks in there. The problem is a slightly different culture. You got a little bit of the Central to Eastern to Central Asian influence, and these guys are respectful. They're nice, but they roll hard.
Okay.
And it's just simply a different thing. And I was going in, and then I would come back. It's like, damn, that hurts. And like for two
Yeah.
days, I would be like, yeah. And then I'd go back in, and I'd be like, hey, so where are you from? Blah blah blah. Stan. I'm like, okay, I got to stay away from anybody who ends
Yeah.
where the country from ends in Stan.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Top quality guys, hard, good folks, not, but they just come from a different tradition
Yeah. Yeah.
of going 100%. And at this stage of my martial arts career, I would be really happy just to just to be able to flow roll and then sit with somebody and just go back and forth practicing one move. And that would be for me the best scenario. I can't go in there.
Yeah.
Once I was rolling with a guy, and I was like, I'm gonna get it. We rolled hard the entire time, and I finally tapped him out. I'm like, yeah. And then I went home and slept for like 3 days. I'm like, what am I doing at this age, on this ego burst of me trying to choke somebody out?
Yeah.
I don't need to be doing that. I need to be able to go every day. So I took a break. Now, I
Yeah.
took a small break from it. I've been doing other things. And in fact, something related to it, I go rock climbing or bouldering in an indoor gym. So when I was there last night and people ask me, like, why do you do this? I go, same reason I do the mixed martial arts, if you want to call it that, what I do, jujitsu and Muay Thai.
Yeah.
I like people that are social, respectful, intellectual, because you have to think ahead or several moves ahead. And let's say those are the reasons that I like being around that. And that's why so many jiu-jitsu guys also play chess, because it's a thinking man's game,
Oh yeah.
looking at moves ahead. Both of them have to understand like climbing three-dimensional space and figure out puzzles. And that's what I was describing last night. And people are like, really? Because it looks like those guys just hurt each other and they're like brutes. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, there are. You
Yeah.
tend to avoid it. Everyone else tends to be a thinker, a
Oh
thinker
yeah.
type, and that's what I enjoy. But also, it's the respect.
Yeah.
There's anybody who is disrespectful generally gets weeded out very quickly.
Oh yeah.
And what you're left with is people that know how to play without breaking their toys.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's yeah. No, I mean yeah, I mean partly because I'm actually I'm like an hour from the city anyway, where there would be camps. But yeah, I've kind of moved on from that heavy. It's hard to go to a gym and not. I mean, you're either can just lay real low, and then nobody will take you seriously. You kind of have to, especially if you go to a new gym, you kind of have to prove yourself, and then but that takes a lot because you can either give up, or even somebody's better than you, that they won't do their all, but they'll just keep enough to like keep you down, and then if you raise it up, they'll raise it up too if you get that person. So but yeah, for me, I've kind of come across the same thing where I'm able to get that what I need, although it's not social so much because I'm doing it on my own, is working on my land, and I do my yoga in the morning. So a combination between the yoga and then working on the land. So I'm doing a lot of digging, making walkways, landscaping type things. And I guess it's, man versus nature, man versus self. I have that man versus self, which I think you probably get in the rock climbing, and then the man versus nature or something as well. As I'm able to fill that niche, I think. But I am in some ways, I guess the social aspect I am kind of removed. So that one I might be missing it up, which is probably why I started this podcast, to connect to people and kind of fill that niche, because there is such a deep a relationship that you build when you are doing the martial arts and everything. And so when I first talked to you, you said you're coming to Chiang Mai eventually. Is that, or you were just coming to whoa, oh, did something just pop up? It does that. There's this weird thing. I don't know. I think it's I did this one time and the hearts came up. I just did this and I saw thumbs down come up. I
Just
don't know.
gave me a thumbs
I don't know
down
where it's
on
coming
this
from.
interview.
Yeah.
Okay.
So wait, was that you're planning coming to Thailand or Chiang Mai, or you mentioned something like that? Is it?
Yeah, I'm right now in November. I'll be going to Vietnam with a Polish mission to establish a research center. And the Poles and the Vietnamese have put in a lot of legwork into creating this relationship. And now we're going to go and check out to see, what areas can we collaborate? So we'll be there for a few weeks. From there, I'll go over to prepare for my project in Cambodia. And then by that point, I should be hitting December. So I'll be done with research, and I get vacations too. So the idea is to go to Chiang Mai to meet up a friend. Great city. I'll do a trip down to Phuket because I got to check out AKA and see how Mike's doing down there. Just a wonderful gym. So I'll be doing that for a bit, and then eventually we'll start back up with the research at Angkor Wat in Cambodia.
I was just gonna ask you. I mean, when you said Angkor Wat archaeologist, I'm thinking, wow, I know there's I mean, yeah, what do you, I mean, that's such an amazing site. I got to go there. Of course, it's not just, I mean, it's expansive, and there's, I think, unexcavated areas, right? I mean, are you doing something out, are you studying, like, do you what do you do? What will you do, or what is the project?
Well, were we there? That that was one of my projects that fell through. When I started graduate school, I'm like, yeah, I want to do Angkor in this. And so I had the funding, the connections to go. And that was the last flare up of the Khmer Rouge along the border. And the committee was justified and back home saying, Alexei, this you don't want to become a martyr for archaeology. So that was a project that went by the wayside there. So years later, actually the year that I went to AKA Thailand, I was there and I go, well, I got some time in between. And there's another one of my friends at Swenson, the University of Toronto. And he says, oh no, there's a project. My student, Andrew Harris, is there. Why don't you go and check it out and join him? And I was like, yeah, fantastic. Oh, thank you, man. And I was able to go there, and like all places that are complex with a lot of people that love it, you got to take your time. So I went there, helped out, and then eventually I was able to develop some ideas of my own that I'm going to be pursuing. Meanwhile, Andrew's project has only grown, and he's provided a lot of space for people to do work. And he found a section of Angkor, which everyone is very much enthralled with, but a little bit off. Right around the time that the Khmer Empire collapsed, the place was still occupied, but you have this Buddhist influence, and they're making these Buddhist terraces or temples using the stones from Angkor. And he's been investigating that. So I think politically wonderful move to be able to do research in such an amazing World Heritage Site. Again,
Yeah,
people say, are you going to go work? I'm like, I don't like calling it work. It's such a
yeah,
privilege to
yeah.
be there. I mean, you should see my morning commute through the gates and everything. Like, oh man, I'm so lucky.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I noticed some. I remember seeing some documentaries about like they re. I mean, there's looking at some of the. Yeah, somebody like remade something, and it wasn't as sophisticated, but it was later. Like somebody came in maybe and kind of reclaimed a certain area, maybe. So is that what? So and that so it's more like dating. People thought it was from one period and it was actually older. That kind of.
Well, this is something that happens in every society.
Yeah,
I mean, look at a place like Rome,
yeah.
and you have all these churches and all these later buildings made with what we call as spolia, which is just simply reusing a ruined building. And you're like, let me grab this. It happens to have like a part of a relief chisel on it, but you're just a guy who has to make his house in a ruined city. So you put that here, let's put
Yeah.
that here. Or sometimes like, damn, this is pretty. I'm actually going to put it here and highlight it.
Yeah.
So, societies basically just, and cities,
Yeah.
their diet is themselves, and they reconsume themselves every once in a while. So
Okay.
there's that aspect of it.
Okay. So yeah. I mean, I guess that makes sense. It's not like a that. Well, interesting. That's So I want to ask you one thing, kind of maybe unrelated in a way, but it's one of my fascinations. So I've just recently completed a doctorate in psychology, and my research was on death, the experience of death. I was interviewing people who had lost a loved one. I'm just getting kind of their experience of death, but more so really how it made them view their mortality. One of these questions that has kind of I've become fascinated with, I'm taking with and moving. It still isn't fully formulated. It kind of came out of my research. It wasn't what my research was, but it's where it's led me is this. I think most psychologists do kind of, their theories are really like introspection. So this is kind of me on one level, is what am I doing here in Thailand, way out kind of in the jungle on these, with my wife and son, and I'm doing all this landscaping for why. And I'm kind of, in my mind, I'm preparing for my death. I want to die on my land. I don't want to go to hospitals, and I want to just, in my last 10, 20, 30 years, I kind of visualize myself, being old and just wandering around my land, being able to eat fruit trees and stuff. So I'm planting all the fruit trees. So that's kind of what I'm doing. And then I'm thinking, well, that's actually, it's by knowing how I want to die, it's kind of helping me align the way I want to live. Now, and when I hear your story, you had, you know, you've passion, right? To me, life is about passion, and you've followed a passion for a long time, and that was always what I felt like. Yeah, the meaning of life and all these is like following your passion, and then just by having that endpoint has kind of realigned me with passionate what you're doing, and then I also kind of visualize this like how I want to die. So, have you thought about that? Do you have an ideal way to die? Is that something that is
Oh, that's basic philosophy right there. And you know, I carry with me a copy of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations with me
okay? Yeah.
in my backpack at all time. I don't know how many copies I've gone through, but every time, especially if I'm feeling stressed, I'll read a few passages, or just to spend the time, or if I want to look super pretentious while I'm sitting in a cafe, I'll have that out and I'll read through. And that's all about understanding that we will all die.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about the only thing that is secure in this life. So you need to prepare yourself for your death. And it's not a morbid fascination. Seneca wrote so much about this that people wonder, it's like, why are they so fascinated with death? They're not. They simply, it's something that's going to happen. And the idea of preparing, and that comes as small as, imagine that you're going to leave tomorrow. How is your house? How are your things? What burdens are you going to leave on other people? It's like,
Yeah.
are you ready to leave at any moment? You should be preparing for that. And then the other thing is, well, you're living your life understanding that you will eventually have to leave. So that's a healthy way to understand it. And it creates some humility for you. And it also makes a lot of the things that get people enraged and angry, from road rage to what I call latte rage, when your latte isn't right and you're yelling at some poor teenager. You realize, you know what, we're all going to go, and this may be my last moment on earth, and I have wasted it yelling at a kid at Starbucks.
Yeah.
And that was my last moment on earth. So visualizing and thinking about your death is something that a lot of Stoic philosophers say is how you should start your day. Or if you hit a point where things are just getting all crazy, just think about it. Go, if this is your last day on earth, how do you want to spend it? And when you go to sleep, think, I might now wake up. So when you wake up, you're like, damn, I got another day. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Let me go with that one. It's not a morbid fascination, but it's a healthy way to live.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I asked Brodie Farber this, he said he wanted, I mean, at first, yeah, there's one aspect is the accepting that we could die at any moment. But then there's the scary thought of, or it can be scary, is that you're not gonna, you actually are gonna live this long life and actually like be at this stage where you might consciously leave, which is what I'm actually hoping to have, where I can kind of choose. I visualize it like being really sleepy, where you can stay awake a little longer, but at some point, no matter how much you want to stay awake, it just feels so good to finally just go to sleep. And I hope I can reach that stage. So when I asked Brodie Farber, he said he wanted to get attacked by bear, hunting a bear, maybe, and the bear attack him. You know, he would be fair. You know, I've been hunting, and or in a knife fight in a bar or something. So there are actually like fun ways to go, or you know, rock climbing or something, just fall from things. So would you do you actually, I can tell you've accepted that you could go at any time. Do you still have an ideal? Do you want it prolonged? Or, I mean, yeah.
How do you go? Oh, no, I understand the idea of a heroic death motivated a lot of people in the past on what they did. I really consider the entire Viking expansion through Europe in part motivated by the desire to create a narrative that'll be remembered. And all of their ideas on whether you get to the afterlife was essentially the quality of your death. And that's a society that was very much warrior based. I find this sometimes talking to some MMA guys or football players or people that are in dangerous high contact sports. They're like, man, you know what? If I'm going to go, I want to go in the ring fighting and doing it. And so, and it's like, yeah, you want to, but if you don't carry yourself, chances are you're going to die around age 55, suffering from some type of brain damage, in a bed, not recognizing your family members,
Yeah,
and soiling yourself. That's
yeah,
probably how you're going to go.
yeah,
So Brodie, yeah, I hope he fights a good bear. And he does that. Totally understand that. He has a warrior mentality to life, in a very fascinating and I think even healthy way. Everyone else is, and the way things go, you will die, you will suffer, you will lose your friends, you will have buried your parents. Um, People say it's like, oh my God, it's like 44%. I think it's listening to a comedian. I don't want to steal material. 44% of all marriages end in divorce. You're like, okay, that means that 56% of them end in death. So,
yeah,
you
yeah,
will lose your partner and you will go on, and that's how you will leave. So do prepare yourself for suffering and what life can be. So when you have a good day, I recommend people just sit back and go, oh, this is nice.
yeah,
And recognize it, because you're going to have some painful days up ahead. I wish we all could have what we call a sweet death in
yeah,
some form like that. But unfortunately, medicine has advanced to the point that we just sort of draw it out to the bitter
yeah,
end.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That was one of the yeah, when yeah, I mean I guess I think what causes that is basically going to the hospital when you're sick. And it sounds funny, but yeah, I want hospitals to have nothing to do with my health, because once you do, then you're almost guaranteeing that you're going to be there in your death, because if you go there for every sickness, then you're definitely going to go there when you're really sick, but so sick that you might die. And then it's almost setting yourself up to guarantee to be there. And then and that's what and a lot of my interviews that I had I was I was hearing this. And then the other thing that was really hard to hear is how many people are, and you mentioned that it's not like a morbid fascination, how many people they were with their loved one, because that was the main requirements of the research that, or of the participants, that they had experienced losing a loved one and had meaningful conversations towards their death. And how few people actually were really able to ask those intimate questions at the very end. They would actually avoid the topic of death, even though their loved one here is about to die. Like, why wouldn't you ask them something like, what are you thinking? Do you have any regrets? I think they felt like it was taboo to ask these questions. And obviously you might not want to make it up, but I mean, or make them feel bad. You're worried about their feelings, but it seems like on their last moments, that's probably all they would. Why wouldn't they want to just maybe discuss these things? And they'd end up like talking about their family and their kids or something, and they would regret it, though. They would regret having not talked about these things. And in some cases, they even broke into tears when I asked them the question about, like, okay, well, how what were they thinking? How did they feel? So I don't know. Yeah, I didn't have a question there, but are there any comments on that aspect of death? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. There's a very influential study by Ernest Becker, The Denial of Death. And he looks across cultures on how people address death. We think this is how you address it. No, in the Western world, we do a certain thing, but you can look at different cultures and say, what do you do with this inevitable fact? And as an archaeologist, nearly every monument you see on Earth that you go and you pay tickets to go in and take pictures and go, how amazing, is somebody trying to deny the fact that they will die. And they're somehow trying to put their mark on the land, or even create some sort of cosmological connection with this world and the afterworld. So the denial of death is a strong motivation for a lot of both emotions, cultural norms, and even entire civilizations and the monuments that we admire. And this is something that is different across culture. For those people looking at this, and eventually we all have to deal with it, I would recommend looking at what other people do with this inevitable fact of life. Denial is one way, and there's the other one, which is acceptance and living your day differently. And it seems like you're somewhere in between a stoic and a prepper, in the fact that you're
Yeah.
preparing for your later
Yeah.
years of your death by
Yeah.
planting trees,
Yeah.
but you're doing it in a very mindful fashion. Yes, a very strong motivation in society. And when you go to Angkor or any religious site, it's about the denial of death.
Interesting. No, that's very interesting. I was going to ask you. I mean, I think I took a. I mean, yeah. I mean, archaeology and culture are. I mean, I was gonna. I mean, yeah. You answered actually some questions I was going to ask about this, because, yeah, obviously some of these things are so much more widespread. I mean, even 100 years ago, our cultures, modern culture, not even Western culture or Eastern cultures, just kind of modern culture has not. We do kind of tend to push death away in a lot of ways. Now, one thing that's interesting about this too, and is so we bought this land here, and it's an orchard of these fruit trees. Lummi, I don't know Longon, if you're familiar with them. I didn't really know them until I came here. They're kind of like a lychee, like a shelled small fruit with a sweet thing inside. But the area, we're right on the river. I've left a couple of those trees, but I've actually let a couple of those new ones come because they had sprayed chemicals on them. I'm taking those trees out, planting other trees, and trying to break that like row feeling that they planted with straight irrigation. I'm like slowly molding it back to just kind of natural looking, even though I'm influencing it. But now it's a little cheaper, this land, because it's right next to an open crematorium, where our village. So there's our village, and then you go past the village, and there's all the orchards. So all of the neighboring land are other orchards. We're the only people who decided, like, let's put a house in this beautiful land. It's on a river. It's why wouldn't you? But and so I would say in Thai, or at least when you go more rural areas, and I think that's true worldwide, it's more maybe the culture is like urban or rural is almost the culture break, where if you're urbanized, you're not as close. So I would say here we are. They are. I mean, somebody dies in the village, and the body burns right here. So I guess, yeah, I was going to ask. I saw some of your publications were mentioned something specific about urbanization and the Tiwanaku. Is there any connection between like okay, I didn't yeah, is there a connection that you make between those?
So the connection between, you say, like the civilizations I have studied, and specifically what aspect?
Oh, like the like I said, to the. Well, yeah, let me first ask, what was it exactly on there's urbanization, like, I guess, if it's alongside these ancient cultures, how, like, rural communities. I mean, because I know you've world traveling. I guess the difference between rural mindset and urban, so sometimes that difference can be greater than Eastern, Western, something like that.
Yeah, okay, I get it. No, you know what, when we talk about a city or urbanization, uh, we talked about it. It's like early in archaeology, it's like, oh yeah, here's a city, here's a city, here's a city. And then we've done a couple more research and a little bit more research. And we're like, wait, what is a city? And is it the same thing everywhere in the world? Because a European city, from medieval times on, was a mercantile city located on a river. There was traffic, there was trade. It absorbed the rural population, and usually, though the death rate was so high that it could only survive through more people coming in. And then I work at Tiwanaku, and when the original like Europeans, when they went there from Spanish conquistadors later, you're like, okay, this is huge buildings, not near a river. It's 4,000 meters, 13,000 feet up. There's barely anything growing. It is cold as hay. There's nothing of value around here. Why is this place here? And at that point, we realized, people all come together in one place and build big things, usually really useless things, for different reasons. And that's what we're looking and trying to understand. What's the motivation for people to leave rural farms, or even better, hunter-gatherers all of a sudden decide to all congregate in one place, usually with an increase in violence and malnutrition, and build a city. And then eventually it collapses. What motivates people to do that? Especially in a place that didn't have a city beforehand. It's not like we're going to make something that looks like that. Okay, I got that. How about we're going to make it and we have no idea or precedent for this? And that's important about the human condition. And what is our motivations and what brought us to this point where the majority of the planet is now living in urban environments?
Yeah, interesting. That's wow, yeah, no, it's so interesting to look at all these. And are there any right now, when you're, I mean, do you have I mean, you obviously have a lot of ideas that you can see. What connections do you have, like when you come to Angkor Wat, or I guess more of like a comparative analysis? Are there any, like, I don't know if either a something kind of like, for me, and like you said, it is, yeah, stoicism for sure. It's like such a, for me, when I came to my like aha moment, like that was early. I'm still early on. It might take me somewhere else. But I've been narrowing in on this. Yeah, to me, it's just this obvious thing. Like, oh yeah, why wouldn't I want to prepare for my death? What kind of, I guess, obvious things have you concluded based on your research and travels, looking at cultures, I guess, specifically about the human condition? Like, what kind of things are like obvious now that weren't obvious? I mean, you've been doing it for a while. Even something that happened maybe 6 years ago that you came into understanding, or yeah, what type of a like thread of theories have kind of come together, maybe, or does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And to go back to this urban example,
Yeah.
in these cities, you go, you see these ruins, you're like, oh, a city. We've come to realize that there's different motivations for people to come together and do things. And the model right now is a mercantile commercial city, but even that is changing. So when we go to other places, you just have to realize there's other ways that people can live very close to each other. And the idea is, what motivates? There's this place along the Peruvian coast called Sican. Izumi Shimada has been excavating there for decades. And that place existed. Essentially, it was a gigantic, and I know I'm misrepresenting this, but for the purposes of this conversation, it was a gigantic cemetery. And people would bring, that's where you got buried. So as a result, you had to have ceremonies. So there was temples. You had to be buried with the proper equipment. There was huge workshops dedicated towards creating the objects that we now find beautiful to be placed with the dead and buried. And that was enough motivation for people to continue to go there. And that lasted for hundreds of years. Now, where I work at Tiwanaku, previous scholars said, like, oh, this was a major capital. This was an empire like the Inca. they were conquering and so on. And the data at the time could support that. It was a fine idea at the moment. But then more excavations happened. And the funny thing is, the main artifact that you're finding there were beer glasses, pre-Columbian beer glasses, other plates used to serve, tasty things like stews of fish and cuts of llama, and lots of garbage, ash, just all over the place. And you go, well, what the hey is going on here? And when you look at modern Andean societies and what a festival is like there, there's a small village, it's almost empty, but then all of a sudden there's a festival day and everybody comes in and they're drinking, they're trading stuff, they're dancing, and they're fighting. A lot of fighting, not just like Jersey Shore bar fight. There's this official Andean institution, pre-Columbian times, called Tinku. And that's where the community and people that wanted to fight, or there's somebody else the problem, they'd sit there and beat the hay out of each other. And as a fighter yourself, what happens when two people beat the hay out of each other? About half the time they become really good friends.
Yeah.
So there they are. And by the way, the women fight too. And to tell you the truth, at that Highlands there, I'd rather fight two guys up there than one of the women. Very strong people. So that's what was going on. So what we call a city in one place was actually sort of a cemetery that grew up around the concept of preparing for death. The other one was essentially a grown-up festival site where people would come in and just have these. Imagine the rest of your life is hard work with potatoes and growing and so on. And then for 1 week, you get to go there, drink beer, take hallucinogens, meet people that you're not related to. That's great. And then if there's any issues, you can just throw down and beat the hay out of each other within the rules of not killing somebody usually. And that just dissipates all types of tensions. You can leave there. Perhaps you meet somebody you're not related to, so you can get married. And you got some great memories. That was enough of a motivation to keep a city alive for 1,000 years. So there's different motivations to why people want to live in those types of places. So to answer your question, there's some universals when it comes to humans. So we have to accept that the fact that we're all the same species, we have similar motivations, but it gets expressed in different ways, or different things are priorities because of other aspects of culture. So we have to balance that back and forth. We're all the same and we're all different.
Yeah. Wow, okay, that's excellent. No, that's good. There's some good takeaways, and I hope to meet up maybe if you're in Chiang Mai, and maybe see what I have going down here. I'm like an hour away from the city, or I'd come up there and meet up or something. So are there what's the rest of your day look like, or are you
Right now it's 5:30 here in Warsaw, and we're hitting a time when it's getting dark early and it's getting cold. We just went through a summer where I could not sleep because the sun's going down at 10 o'clock at night and then coming up at 4:30. So I'm getting some good sleep these days. Warsaw is an amazing city. Please don't tell anyone. This is a hidden gem of Europe for me. Beautiful city, lots of things to do. So from here, I'm going to go and just walk down the street, go to probably a new restaurant. It's an affordable place. Come back, do some reading, and I'll start my day up tomorrow. I'm sore from climbing yesterday, so I think I'll stay away from the gym tonight.
Take it out. Excellent. Do some breathing. So you still do. We didn't really talk too much about breathing, but I always start. I do mine in the morning. Do you do breathing exercise in the morning or in the evening or multiple times?
You know what, I've been first of all, I have to admit, I breathe regularly when I'm stressed or anxious. But now at the moment, life is so good, I have to remind myself to do this. But when I'm doing good about it, I wake up 20 minutes breathing. That's combined with meditation. And then if any point in the day I'm feeling either anxious or sleeping, I got a couple of breathing exercises, and you all can go on my sister's web page, the Alexei Vranich, the breathing class, and pick up some free tips on what you can do with your day to either essentially to moderate your energy. And so I'll do it back and forth during the day, but definitely wake up in the morning. And now I've having some difficulty sleeping at night. So I have a few routines that I use when it comes to breathing that helps to sleep. And I'm not, I know other people do it. They unite chakras or do something. It's like, no, I'm just changing the basic biology of my bloodstream in a
Yeah.
way.
Well, you might be
And it'll change my mind.
hitting those
And
chakras
you get
unintentionally. You're awakening them. You can awaken your third eye without even trying.
yeah, I mean,
I think it's
if you want to believe that, not believe that, if that is the way that you view things,
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, yeah.
I'm just a little bit more of a biological type of person when it comes to this, and I'm saying it's like, well, let me alter my pH level
Sure.
to create this effect on my brain. That'll also slow me down a bit because I get my best ideas when I'm trying to go to sleep, and that'll allow me to slip into sleep. So that's what I do. And when I go to AKA or other places, I'll also sit down and train people on how to moderate their breathing when it comes to fighting. And this is something that my sister and Bas Rutten have put together. I'll
Okay.
plug her book, Breathing for Warriors. And that's for people that you want to fight, and you have more experience in fighting. If you can make the other guy lose his breathing, you just need to sit back and wait for him to tire out.
Sure.
And when you're in
Yeah.
a panic, control your breathing and remember your training, because pretty soon you'll be in survival mode and be doing a lot of dumb things.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right. Good. Yeah. Thanks again. Thanks again for joining me. I'll get your sister's webpage. Maybe send me a link. I'll put the links below rather than trying because I didn't catch that. And then if you have any links, have you written I remember seeing something. You're on the History Channel. It's starting to rain and it's going to be noisy now. So yes, send me any links of you if you have it specific in Instagram or Twitter or a link to a book or something that you've written that you want to show, and I'll just post those below. That's the easiest way for anybody to see what you have. So thank you,
Will
and
do.
hope to see you soon.
All righty. See you soon,
Bye.
man.
Bye. Bye.